continuous education program, the committee that put this together. I would like to just a few protocol reminder here. We're expected to switch off our phones. And we equally hope to take some poll and survey. As for safety moment, I understand there is no drill plan for today. So if we see a fire, if we hear a fire alarm, just consider that to be real. The expectation is that we all quietly file out and go to the muster point where we all will be accounted for. As an agenda for today's gathering, let's project the slides, please. So we start with the session opening, which I'm currently doing. We use 10 minutes to take the president's welcome speech, after which we'll do a couple of announcements. Then we'll go to the technical chair introduction. And then the technical chair, we introduce the speaker of today's presentation. After the presentation, we do Q&A. And we'll now close the technical presentation. I will take some 5 minutes for sponsors' remark and a couple of announcements before we call on the Vice President to come and give us the vote of thanks. So may I call on the president of our great association, Dr. James Edet, to come over and give us the opening remarks. So while he's copying over, may I invite the speaker of today's technical presentation, Mr. Frank Evans of Chevron. Please come over, please. May I equally invite to the podium Mr. Olumide Lawal. Olumide is a sectional head, subsurface operations and analysis. He is representing Chevron. Then the chairman of today's occasion is no other person than Mr. Keke Kanu, former Chevron. Please come over. A round of applause, please.
Thank you very much, GS Emeka. I just saw the agenda, and the president's opening remarks is supposed to be 10 minutes. I'm not sure how I'm going to welcome people in 10 minutes. What will I be saying? And then I had to make a point that today it's not NAPE that is hosting Chevron. Rather, Chevron is hosting NAPE today. So that's the point. Let me say on behalf of the Executive Committee of NAPE, the Board of Trustees and Advisory Council of NAPE, the Nigerian Association of Petroleum Explorationists, let me welcome all of you to this technical session sponsored by Chevron, Nigeria Limited. And we are grateful and always happy to have Chevron, who is one of our biggest sponsors, and of course, in every aspect, be it in giving the opportunity to their staff to serve NAPE in executive positions, or providing funds for activities of NAPE. Chevron is a big and key player in this position, and we are always very grateful. So let me just say thank you very much for coming. I understand we have about 100 members who are online, and that speaks a lot, even though our physical presence seems to be a little scanty. So let's not waste too much time, and let me say welcome and enjoy the hosting that Chevron has for us. I mean, we have an erudite speaker who is going to be the one to present to us today, and we are happy to have him in our midst. Thank you very much. Have a great time.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just take your seat, please. So let's introduce the topic for today's presentation. It is depositional environments and their impact on waterfront movement and future development for deep water fields. Like I said, this will be presented by our own Frank Evans. So a quick introduction, just for us to introduce the chairman of today's occasion. He is Mr. Kanu. Just a brief profile, please. Mr. Kanu Azotaramo Kanu, popularly called Keki, is a seasoned oil and gas explorationist with C-suite level industry expertise, garnered over his 43 years career. His experiences across several leadership positions within Africa, Europe, Middle East, and North America continents as development and new venture geophysicist, asset leader, deep water and shelf opportunities explorationist, among several official portfolio while at Chevron. He is the current Deputy Managing Director at West Africa Exploration and Production Company Limited, WAIP, a position he was headhunted for after his sterling career upon retirement in 2014 as the exploration manager of Chevron Nigeria. He is also the founder of Akuma Hills Limited, an earth sciences consultancy company. Kanu is an alumnus of University of Ife, class of 1973, fellow of NAPE, member of NAPE Advisory Council, an active member of Nigerian Mining and Geoscience Society, NMGS, AAPG, and Petroleum Exploration Society of Great Britain. He's happily married to Mary Kanu, and the union is blessed with children and grandchildren. A round of applause to our chairman of the occasion. So I will call on Kanu to come and introduce the speaker, and he will take it off from there. Please, after introducing the speaker, the expectation is that you all move so that you can participate in the presentation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, everyone. I'm kind of like overwhelmed. I didn't know if people were investigating me and digging out all those facts. So when did I leave Ife? 1976. I had 1973. I actually I went to Ife. Yeah. I went to Ife 1972 and left 1976. Thanks for all you have said. You know, for me, this is more than a NAPE technical meeting. It's like homecoming of sorts, you know, and you understand why. You know, I'm seeing friends I've not seen since I left Chevron, so it's wonderful. And there's another reason why it's special for me. If you were at the divestment workshop we had in July, yeah, you would think the majors are all running away from the country. And then the ExxonMobil sale thing also didn't help matters because it looked like, oh, Chevron is leaving, Shell is leaving, ExxonMobil is running away. You know, and at that meeting, one of the things that came up, I'm happy my friend Tony Akiosho is here. So guys, let's just relax, don't make this too officials, you know. My friend Tony Akiosho was also at that meeting. And then there was a lot of talk about production having gone down from 2 million to 1 million. What was not said was that the way things were going, especially with deep water production also reducing, we might actually be talking not of going back to 2 million, but maybe about 500,000. And those are the things that we should be looking at. A lot of focus for the independents, the Nigerian companies to look at what the majors are leaving. But I think as a country, we should also be saying, is there a field where the majors can play? And both Tony and I were, you know, we've had several conversations since then. And we said the deep water should be explored more. It's still the same blocks that we had while I was still working in Chevron that we still have. There are all that deep water blocks, and there should be encouragement to those who have the capability to look at those other blocks. When you look at the geology, most of the work that has been done on the channel complexes. Where are the deep water fans? There's still part of that whole thing that has not been properly explored. And we think our government should be, encouraging those who can, you know, to do that. The last time I went to Alaba Market several years ago, you go there to buy things from some of these guys. You go there to buy one thing. You are trying to buy a TV. By the time you leave there, you bought TV, you bought a phone, you bought several things because they are businessmen. They encourage you. So our government should also be encouraging the oil companies work on their different capabilities and make sure that the country is moving forward. That's what we need to do. So that was just the side talk. Now to come to why we are really here. Frank Evans, we never really met before, you know, much younger fellow, you know, probably, don't know whether he was born by the time I was leaving Chevron. So Frank is the stratigraphic advisor with Chevron. He has worked for the past 17 years. He earned his BS in geology from Brockport State University in Western New York in 2001, where he focused on quaternary sedimentary and sediment electromagnetism. In 2006, Frank earned a master's in geology from Virginia Tech, where he focused on clastic stratigraphy and applied electromagnetics. His professional career started with Chevron in 2006, where he worked as a development geology in the San Joaquin Valley before moving to the Gulf of Mexico in 2009 and Nigeria and Mid-Africa in 2019. Frank has worked shallow marine and deep water systems, applying stratigraphic and seismic attribute techniques for development, appraisal, and modeling projects. Currently, Frank is a seismic stratigrapher for Chevron Nigeria. Chevron Nigeria Limited Applied Research and Technology Services Arts in the Reservoir Characterization and Modeling Group. So we can see that Chevron, there's a reason why they are better than the best. You know, when I was there, we used to say Chevron is better than the best. There's a reason why they are that. We can see them pushing, not just looking at Shell, but looking at those other places, Deepwater, to see how production can actually be upped. My president mentioned here that today it's Chevron hosting NAPE. Thank you, Frank. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Well, thank you for the kind words and the great introduction. It's clear that there is a lot of experience that this organization has been built on here to give Chevron and myself the opportunity to come and share what we do. So it's a great opportunity, and it's wonderful to see everybody here today. As you know, I am from Western New York. I did start in geology back in the 90s, so I feel like I've been around a little while, but I certainly hope to inspire some of the younger practitioners coming up through academics and industry, and hopefully, you know, share some of my thoughts and techniques on the way we're looking at things now, and to see the continuation of our field into development and exploration. So. That's me. Well, while they're pulling it up, I guess I can keep talking a little bit. I'm also a musician, and I was always told never to quit my day job. And now I can see why, because if I was here with a guitar, I guarantee there wouldn't be half as many people in the room or online. So anyway, all right. So, you know, I'd really like to start out with, everybody knows how much work goes into, you know, our day-to-day jobs, and actually how many people are standing behind us in collaborative teams from the bottom up, you know. So, you know, right off the bat, I'd definitely like to recognize some of the folks that have been instrumental in the development of this work. Dapo, Salami, Alex Kinaku, and Ni Oshinubi. They've been very involved. And from that, we've had a lot of support from groups like our petrophysics department, our geophysics department, you know, just countless hours of dedication, you know, really culminate these types of things. And I'm just the guy that kind of gets to stand up here at the end and talk about it. So, you know, a lot of thanks to our teams, our management, and the visions that, you know, people like Madam Doja have for us to develop these platforms and share. So, you know, the key message today, as you saw in the title, we're going to be talking about depositional environments and how we interpret them and use them to help us in things like modeling, forecasting, and history matching, which is really a lot of our industry these days, is being able to move from, you know, just a geologic model to be able to have these field simulations to match our production performance and be able to forecast accurately. So, you know, I really want to touch early on the Deepwater systems overview and what do we mean by Deepwater systems? I know some of these people have been there, done that, and have had a lot of experience, but I definitely want to make sure that some of the younger folks that are going to be coming up and hopefully working with me and pushing this type of work forward will be, I guess, foundational on what I'm going to talk about. So, and then I'd like to talk a little bit about the seismic character of Deepwater systems, and in particular Deepwater channels. And as KK started off, you know, he was correct in talking about the you know, the more distal fans, and you know, so I am going to focus on the channel complexes today because they are, for me, the easiest to convey, you know, the seismic character that I want to talk about in our examples. But the distributary lobes are fascinating, both seismically and from a, you know, development, production, exploration standpoint. So even though I'm face focusing on the channel aspect today, I do have a lot of, experience and work and pushing it out into these distributary lobes. So, but I do want to, thanks for that kind of early distinction there. And then we'll get into integrating geology, geophysics, some seismic stratigraphy and geomorphic workflows that are more or less becoming industry standards. So I'm going to show how we applied them here and some of the results and the case study investigation. So, some of the key focuses are going to be seismic stratigraphy. What can we get from our seismic? We have a lot of wells in some areas, not a lot of wells in other areas. How do we make the connection between there? A lot of people talk about, seismic quality. It's too poor. We had trouble imaging, versus what we see in the wells. And, my message there is to, any seismic, if you use it, is going to give you something. Maybe it's poor. You have a very low signal to noise, but you're going to be able to extract something if you look at it correctly and you take your time and you integrate it with your wells. It might only be, this is the top and bottom of a structure or a reservoir, or you might be able to get your facies and porosities from these things. So, definitely key message is to use your seismic, work with your petrophysicists, geophysicists, and then, I'll talk a lot about flattening. For me, a lot of these assets and fields that we're looking at now are more challenging structurally. They are hard to image. There's a lot of faulting. They're very folded. So to unravel the stratigraphy, we really need to be confident that we're looking at it in chronostratigraphic space. And lastly, the seismic and wells, put that together, tie it in with your dynamic data, understand how your field is actually behaving. They have the keys to what we're trying to build. They just need to know, what knobs to turn correctly, and so to me, that's a very important integrated aspect is, it's always the circle, right? You build the model, engineers get it simulated, it doesn't really work. You go back, reevaluate it. But now we're having these fields that have years of development. They have a lot of data, production data, pressure data, water data. And, the early days of, hey, we have a lot of production coming in. Now we're to the point where, hey, this field still has a lot of potential, but now, firm avenues, things like that. Your facies are really controlling how water and oil or gas are moving in your reservoirs. So I think it's, as these fields mature, really understand that tank, we're all seeing that it's more complicated than our first model that we built. So anyway, that's a long start to the talk. So let's get into it so we can eat. So, deep water systems, just real high level controls on them, things like climate, sea level, sediment source and storage, which I'll show you guys in a little while, your gradient, how these things are coming down the slope and entering the basin, your sand to mud ratio, what are these flow densities in these deep water turbidites, and those are going to really talk about where's your sand going to be and where's it going to be most developed and why, as well as seafloor topography. Now, more goes into this. Obviously, there's salt provinces out there. There's tectonics that do affect these, but these are some of the big hitters. And then, so basically, what are we going to look at in a deep water system in terms of stratigraphy, and what are things that we want to look at in seismic? And, kind of from up dip to down dip, we're going to look at these canyons. How are these turbidite flows being focused down the slope into slope valleys, and then channel levees. And then finally, the weakly confined channels, and then unconfined, like distributary lobe types. And in this image, you kind of see an example of one system going from a, slope valley into a weakly confined system, and then back into a slope valley, right? These things are complicated. Without seismic, it might be hard to tell what's going on here. And, so that's, a key focus on what we're going to be looking at today. So the controls on deep water systems that I just talk about is sediment supply, right? Are these sediments being delivered from a sand-rich sediment source, or maybe a more mud-rich sediment source? And they're going to have different architectural styles and deposition and extent. And so in the more sand-rich systems, you are obviously going to have, these big fans kind of develop down there that you're able to carry the sand from your deltas across the shelf, down the slope and deposit. Versus your more your more mud-rich things are going to be smaller. Your sand concentrations aren't going to be as big, right? And that makes sense. So that's one thing we really want to understand is, what's the sediment delivery and why? And you can see right below here, I have a kind of an inset of the sand-rich system versus a mud-rich system. Are you going to be more prone to build vertically, or are you going to be able to have a lot of sand distributed and amalgamated laterally? So those are some important distinctions to understand when you're looking at these. And then finally is just kind of that up dip to down dip progression from the shelf down the slope into the basin floor. And so why is all this important? I started looking at shallow marine starting on the shelf. I didn't know the deep water, right? And then when I moved into deep water, I started trying to make comparisons and connections to what I learned on the shelf and how our deltas are behaving, how things are prograding or transgressing. And so that, really brings back still the importance in the concepts that we learned there of our sea level, what is going on with sea level over time, and what is the connection potentially between that, shelf and the deep water sediments. And most of the time, these things are disconnected, right? You have a long way to take sand to get it from the beach to the deep water environment, so, that's kind of the one thing that I always try to step back and understand, okay, what's sea level just grossly doing, and so when you have this, really high sea level, your sediment source and where those deposits are pretty far away from the shelf edge that's going to be feeding us. So we're not going to have a lot going on in these turbidite or gravity driven flows down there. So you really end up with these kind of straight, gullies and then small kind of toe set fans. Versus when you do drop sea level, and you can kind of see, I know I need to talk to some folks over here too. When you do lower sea level, you're exposing some of the shelf, you're exposing those sediments, you're able to carry them farther, closer to that slope edge, closer to it. So, when you're dropping sea level here in this early low stand that we're talking about, now you're going to have the sediment and the energy and the delivery to these systems to be able to erode. Now you're going to cut out something and you're going to move it down slope. And now you're following it up with sand. So great. I've just made a space to put a bunch of sand that I have. So these are key aspects of, some of the things that we're looking at integrating. So now, that's very high level. Obviously, a lot goes into that. But what I'm really interested in, and what I always have at my fingertips, is seismic and well data. And what can we learn from that? And so here's, kind of an example. And again, I'm focusing on the channelized type things, but I'm very happy to talk later about any of the other things. And that's because, you can see it easily. It's easier for me to convey what we're looking at. And so, from bounding surfaces and stacking patterns, they have very, systematic patterns that you see that is driven by sea level and sediment supply, where, we can see these channels, right? Where, we see these discordant shapes that are, in our seismic, right? So we know that when we see a nice incision, we end up with these, U-shaped or whatever valleys, and everybody can see those, right? But how do they fill, right? And so that's also kind of systematic. Your earliest fills of these are usually laterally amalgamated channels. So where do you have your best chance to find, lateral amalgamation is in your earliest deposits if they're leaving sand, right? In the bottom of these, and they manifest themselves as these kind of semi-continuous high amplitude reflectors, right? Versus later, when you get into the late style of fill, you're moving into those more channel levee aggradational portions. You have these vertically building channels here and a lot of levee flanked on either side. So where's your sand going to be here? The same thing. Now we see these high amplitude, very discontinuous reflectors, right? And then repeat. So something I think about, whether I'm looking at core data or looking at seismic data, is, okay, what the base of these flows, where we drop sea level, we're having that early erosion come in. And what's the first thing I'm going to expect? And these are these debris flows, things that are very muddy, bringing a lot of things through the system, So when I am looking at that, I know I'm at the bottom of the section. It's like, okay, this is debris flow. It's going to be, it's going to be muddy. It's going to be tight, but right above this, what comes behind the debris flow is what I'm interested in, and so that's, what I do look in seismic. These debris flows are very typically chaotic. They don't show up as anything, right? They're almost transparent in your seismic. So then above that, you can see the system start building on top of those early debris flows. And one of my favorite things, and I will point out the work of Posamatir and Kola from 2003. It's been, kind of an inspirational paper for people that want to, develop in these systems seismically. They have a very easy cartoon to follow that is pretty repeatable when I've looked at a lot of data sets. No, it's not always perfect, but it gives you a good sense of, you have a lower debris flow, then your frontal splays, and then you start building your channel complex with your levees on top of that. And it just really gave me a good idea of what do I want to look for in seismic to see this kind of thing. And it's these, classic gull wing levees, that are repeatable. You see it when you see these levee deposits in seismic, you're gonna see that. And it took me a long time to realize that, I can't see these things. Why? And now that gets into how I was interpreting seismic and really how we were supposed to interpret seismic. So what I want to talk about now is integrating geology and geophysics together. And what is important about that is understanding your seismic resolution and your scale of your depositional environment. Now, I'm not saying that every geologist that wants to use seismic needs to go do a very detailed geophysical wedge model with an inversion data set to really understand what the interval velocities are. Those are great and nice to have, but don't limit yourself on time. Use what you've learned, talk with your geophysicists, and sometimes you can move through things quickly to address what you're trying to address. If you want to maybe exactly quantify what's out there, sure, your project might dictate having a lot of geophysical work done, but sometimes just having an understanding of what you're dealing with and able to move forward with your interpretation so you can get your modelers and engineers the information they need. So I want to just start with seismic resolution versus detectability. And this is something that's fascinating. And so I hope you guys that maybe haven't thought about it this way, that are looking at, you are the interpreters and modelers, is, what is our detectability? Resolution is one thing, it's great. But when you have thin beds and tuning things that are going below your seismic resolution, well, does that mean this is the end? No, it doesn't, and detectability is something I want to demonstrate that is still fundamental and very important with our mapping, and that's really going to help us outline the extents of our reservoirs and understand what the potential has. So here's an example of that you see. You see there's a sediment fairway moving kind of north to south, and then you have this channel complex, a late channel complex kind of coming out and, starting to fill it and follow the trend. Well, here's an example of something like, okay, well, what is the resolution versus the detectability? So I've made a couple cross sections across this channel complex, A, B, and C. You can see them in the insets here from top to bottom. And I've just roughly put the thickness here of the events. And I wanted to show that, okay, I went ahead and calculated what my tuning is. So we're tuning around almost 300 feet. And we're detecting down to almost 150 feet, right? And so what does that mean? So down here at the C cross section, you can really see a very prominent top and bottom reflector, peak and base, base and trough. You can see that. And okay, we're above our tuning, so that makes sense. I can resolve this event. The same thing here. When we look at a cross section of B, I can still make out the peak and trough, right? So we're still resolving it. Now, what happens up here at A? When I'm looking at my seismic, I can still make an interpretation. I can still say, okay, here's the edge of that. Here's the edge of that. Why? Because we're detecting it. And you can see here, I don't have a resolved top and base, but I do still have enough of amplitude or whatever to help us, distinguish where that edge is. So don't just stop at resolution. Look at your detection and work with your geophysicists on that. And then, of course, understand your scale. I did just throw a few, kind of average numbers that are in the literature and that, we've, kind of noted in Chevron. So, what's your width and what's your thickness of these things? So typical submarine canyons, greater than 10 kilometers. And, you work your way down a slope width of 1 to 3 kilometers. These are out there. They're in the publications. Use them. A lot of people have spent a lot of time at outcrops, a lot of times on their workstations, really quantifying these things, and they make sense. So they're going to help you put your interpretation in space and more accurately define it. All right. Another thing that's I find very, very useful for me in being able to do stratigraphy from seismic is really working with the geophysicists and the geologists that have looked at this data already. What is the best seismic volume? Is it the nears? Is it the fars? Is it the fulls? Is it the old processing? Is it the new processing? And you're probably going to get a lot of different answers or one consistent answer. And this is just an example of what's dangerous if you just take one and run with it, and here on the top, there we go. On the upper one, on the left-hand side, you can see that, here's a volume that I want to decide if I want to use or not. And then there's the same volume that had some co-noise, some noise attenuation done on it. And a lot of times, if you're doing 4D, you're doing big structural models, that's going to be what the people are interpreting on. But as a stratigrapher, you're like, okay, well, now I'm losing my geologic edges. I'm smoothing away what's the geology. So even if I do a fantastic job of putting this in stratigraphic space, I'm still not gonna see the detail that we really want. So just a quick message there is, make sure you're looking at the volumes and make sure that there might not be a better one. Sometimes lower signal to noise with a lot of detail is better than a high signal to noise with smoothed out detail. So, all right, so now more the nitty gritty. What do I do? And so we have a really simplified stratigraphic and geomorphic workflow that's been around for a long time. And believe it or not, I still go through this workflow when I'm working. The only difference is now we have a lot newer technologies that allow us to either get through this workflow faster or with more precision and accuracy. And so some of the things are, very simple. We slice the volume, a seismic volume. You have an inline, a cross line, and a Z slice. Well, that works great in flat sediments. What happens when you start getting more challenging structure? And so we'll talk a little bit about that on the coming slides. Then there's things like creative dataming. And that's just simply trying to make a quick surface that represents, kind of a monocline or a mono dipping seismic volume and being able to slice through that. One of my favorites, optical stacking. We get a lot of uplift from optical stacking in terms of facies, in terms of reservoir extent, geobody modeling, and you'll see some examples of that. And then channel chasing, simply using your propagator, finding a channel, and having the computer go through and try to follow that channel amplitude. That's something we also do. And then finally, seismic attribute analyses. And I hope to show you guys today that spending a little bit of time on getting your framework and then moving them into attributes is something that is now a lot faster with the softwares we're using and has a lot of uplift. So what are these seismic interpretation advancements that I'm allowed to talk about? So, first is, you kind of see this full flattened geologic model, and we'll talk a little bit about that. I'm not saying you need to go to that. simple flattening works great in a lot of situations, and I still use that daily. But, you know, now we have the software that can move through our seismic data guided by, you know, hopefully intelligent interpreter to really quickly build a geologic model that's going to put everything in chronostratigraphic space. So when you look at it flat, it looks like you're standing in front of an outcrop, or you can really visualize these things. And you'll see an example of kind of the results of that right below it. This is a seismic attribute frequency decomposition or spectral decomposition, where you can, you know, you can see, you know, now things are popping out. You see channels, you see weakly confined systems, you see distributary lobes, you know, and you see the progression of that too, you know. So these are things that, you know, these happen. I think, you know, Walther, everybody remembers Walther's law, superposition, and, you know, these environments still up dip to down dip, right? Pro grade, A grade, they're going to be stacked a certain way. So, you know, pay attention if you can to the big picture. And then finally, here's a look at optical stacking, right? You know, we really want to understand what's the reservoir look like. Now we can make geobodies and move quickly into modeling. All right, is everybody still with me? Everybody's awake? All right, good. We're moving through it. So, you know, now I talked a lot about flattening, and I think everybody knows the importance of it from a stratigraphy standpoint. And so the traditional flattening methods that I've been talking about here is obviously no flattening. Then there's single horizon flattening, where we do have an interpreted horizon. We can right click on it or whatever in the software, and it'll quickly adjust the seismic to that to make that surface flat. And that's great in and around that surface and event. It tells us a lot. It gives us a great idea on what it is, the architecture right there. Then there's multi-horizon flattening, which is obviously incorporating more than one horizon into a flattening framework. So maybe you have 2 or 3 horizons. Great. You know, you pick the maximum flood, you can go in there. And I know it's not the clearest in the room, but now going from, you know, something that's unflattened to totally flattened, you know, you can really start to see how things are being depositive and how are they stacking. You know, are they compensationally stacking? Are they genetically related, or are they a totally different system? You know, so there. And then, you know, finally, you know, there's the full volume flattening on the right-hand side. And that's where you do start with just your regular reflectivity, amplitude, volume. You do build a geologic model, where the computer builds the geologic model. You just help it do it correctly. And then, you know, you do have a full volume at that point. That's, you know, in chronostratigraphic order, Wheeler space, or however you want to really refer to that. All right, so now the stuff I love, the cool stuff when you're a stratigrapher and somebody hands you a new seismic volume and they ask you to show them something new, right? And that, to me, that's always been a driver. It's like, okay, these fields have been around for a long time. What can I bring new? These, you know, I'm following better geologists than me, right? But how can I take the work and the sweat that they've put in, you know, mapping, drilling, and put it to quick use and try to get some uplift out of it? Obviously, you're going to be constrained a little bit by what seismic volumes you have available. Do you even have inversion? You know, most of the time it's no. I mean, I wish everything came with inversion, right? It helps me a lot right off the bat. So, but most of the things I don't have, just my first example does. Lucky me. So, you know, you can used to looking at seismic, what's going on here? You know, easy to move into the attribute space. Sometimes a simple coherence attribute will give you the detail and the information you're looking for. I was able to move into the coherence volume and see, like, okay, well, we're looking at some, you know, channelized system here, you know, so let's dive into that more. So here's a look at the inversion, and then I flattened the inversion, and, you know, kind of built a model based on that inversion work. And really rapidly from the seismic, was able to put together a synthetic wedge model for thickness. You know, we had the inversion, we had a lot of well data. Let's invert for thickness and generate a reservoir map, right? I didn't even have to build a whole model, but now we're able to quickly move from, you know, a high confidence understanding of the distribution of thickness within our system and show that, okay, you know, this is not just a, you know, channel levee system. You know, this is not, you know, an organized stacking pattern. You know, you have disorganized facies in here. We're able to see that from the amplitudes, and we're able to generate a thickness map now, you know, and obviously you can move that into a model if you need to, but if not, sometimes a map's enough to make a decision. Here's an example of the multi-horizon flattening. This was, you know, really helped quickly show where the sand is going. And, you know, they hadn't really had a good understanding of the system. I just had these amplitude maps. I should have showed the before and the after. This is the one I generated. You know, amplitude driven plays, but we did have a pretty, you know, pretty folded structure. And what's happening? So what we did is we used the amplitudes, we used optical stacking, and we were able to build a geologic model pretty quickly that was a deterministic model that, you know, we're still using. And then finally, the full volume flattening, which is what we're going to talk about today too. And these kind of four insets here, you know, I know we're in one kind of small area, but really set the stage for improvements in the ability to model these things and understand. You know, when I first started looking at this, I saw a bunch of bright reflectors at the top of an anticline. All right. You know, I'm a lot of times used to, okay, there's oil, there's gas, you know, these are, you know, a continuation of these reflectors here, you know, just a quick look at it, and then started flattening, you know. So I took the first pass. It's easy, simple flattening, just did one surface here, started looking at it like, okay, you know, there's a big erosional event that's coming in here, and we have a slow valley, you know, it's more complicated than I originally thought, you know. And then I come and do the full volume flattening, and I'm starting now to be able to really understand, kind of like I said before, we have these transparent chaotic faces at the bottom, usually our debris flows. And then on top of that, I start, you know, seeing these brighter amplitudes here that are, you know, more or less laterally continuous. Those are going to be more of your amalgamated initial channel facies, and then up into those more levee building, and, you know, and then we go back and we look at the well logs, and we're saying, aha, all right, now I'm starting to put the picture together and then see, you know, what's over here. You know what I mean? Now I'm out of that system. So if we put a well over here, you know, you're going to be in something totally different. And that was a big aha moment for me in this area. You can kind of just see a glimpse of, you know, some of the important things that came out of being able to generate a flattened amplitude. Now we see these sands, and you know, so okay, well, everybody can look at that now and say, okay, yes, we have a channel system here, maybe an avulsion over here. But what that also is giving us a lot of information on connectivity, right? I was struggling to understand this area, why there was oil there. You know, not why there's sand there. I know we're in sand, but why was there a potential here? And, you know, and only over here. It's like, what's the structurally, it didn't make sense. So I was struggling. And once we moved into this flattened framework, we see that it's actually orphaned out there. It's another channel event came through here and cut across it, separating them. Right. And so it was a big aha. Okay, that explains oil versus water in there, you know, and we wouldn't have been able to do that without really getting these channel systems more or less in a stratigraphic architecture that lets us look at them chronostratigraphically. All right. And so now back to that one that we did with the multi-flattening. I just wanted kind of give this a little bit of credence on the workflow and why seismic is very helpful in a lot of cases. So, we have the flattened volume, no big deal. Took the amplitude or envelope extraction, depending on what you want to use, and we're able to go directly into a facies classification in the seismic. And that was something we hadn't tried before. So here's kind of a look at that. And this is really, something that at the workstation you can do in not a lot of time, right? It's just, you got to want to do it. You got to have a little bit of the reins, from your supervisor to take it to these steps. It's always something to consider too, your timing and the size of, size of the project, what you're trying to answer. But in this case, optical stacking did a great job of pulling out the reservoir extent, right? So that's great. I know I'm below seismic, kind of resolution, but using detectability combined with tuning, I was able to confidently say, okay, this is a geobody. Let's just extract the shape of this the seismic from optical stacking, and let's make it a geobody. And now I have my container, right? The computer says, all right, Frank, I'm going to go do what you told me. Here's a blob. You can do what you want inside it, but I really, you told me where you wanted the blob to be, and I made it for you. And I was super happy. So then inside, what do we do with that, right? So there's still, how do you fill this channel system, right? There's facies that we have to worry about. This is one of the cool cases that it doesn't happen every time, but it actually worked pretty well. The seismic was good enough here to be able to break things out into high quality sand, medium quality sand, or, lower quality sand, and then shale. So we did that. And, I guess, some of the main things are now, not only do I know the sand is, I have an understanding of where else do we want to look. So here we have a system that's gone through multiple avulsions, right? And we're able to actually see that now, look at cross sections, understand that these are avulsion events, right? We have some compensational stacking, we're avulsing, yada, yada. All right. Well, over here, which was on the other side of this incline, so this was a high structurally, and this is a high, they weren't even interested. They always thought this was just aquifer over here. And I was like, no, structurally, this is pretty high. We don't have any wells over here. And I can clearly see that we're going from, something that's confined to weakly confined to almost distributary lobe here. I mean, it's just perfect, and so that was an exploration opportunity that we were able to carry forward just based on, this technique. This is just going into facies. The same thing. I let my computer do as much work as it can because I don't like working as hard as it does. And so you literally, I just assign an area. And I tell it, hey, I want, 3 facies in here. This is what my mud system looks like seismically. This is what my high quality facies look like seismically. These are what my marginal and lower quality or off axis facies look like. So the computer says, all right, I'll be right back. And when it comes back, I have a facies model, right? So now it's deterministic. It's extracted from the seismic. Is it right? No. Is it better than I can do fast? Absolutely. But is it pretty accurate? Yeah, it is pretty accurate, but there's always going to be issues everywhere. Even if I do it by hand, I'm still going to make a mistake somewhere. And so here's for the modelers that I don't want anybody to think I'm making this up. So like we are able to pull this in the model space. Here's a facies proportion map that came directly from the seismic in our model up against a single K layer, right? So one model slice through the model. Is it, does this look geologic? First of all, yeah, it sure does because I let it follow the seismic. Earlier workflows that I have, I'll have a few wells out here and I'll say, all right, computer, you're really good at geostatistics. Go out and just, throw some sand, throw some shale out here statistically, right? And that's great if that's all you have. But this was a deterministic way to say, all right, I want you to throw it out there statistically, but I want you to follow my seismic. I want you to really make this thing look like I think it looks. And so low quality facies distribution, high quality facies proportion maps, sorry, not distribution, proportions. all together into our facies model. Now it's the petrophysicists and the geologists' job to fill that with, PKS. I like to leave at this part of the game, but a lot of times I still end up involved with the other groups, which is good. And this was just lastly, just kind of a look at how the wells behaved in this model that literally was 100% generated from the seismic tied to the few wells we had out there. And just to get a feel for, all right, is it still doing things? Do I see these vertical stacking patterns that I expect in this model? So here's, kind of a look at how I check the facies ties, the distribution. I want to make sure that the model is still geologically valid. And so all these things are QC'd to finally generate a model at the end. And, in this case, I was pretty happy with, how these things looked both spatially and temporally. All right, now this one's actually pretty interesting. This is a look at, we talked earlier about how do we get with the engineers simulation? How do we move forward and improve simulation models? When we have geologic information, we've had geologic information. And so what happens when our original geologic models aren't matching what the engineers need? What do we have to do? We have to come back and use everything we can. And so in this example, we have this weakly confined to confined channel system, a lot of sand. You can see here, you can see a look at the final amplitude maps, so we were able to use the seismic in this case. And obviously to get to this point, what I've been talking about all day is flattening and how do we get there? Because the original wasn't as good, but we did have some new seismic data, and we're able to apply these workflows that we've been talking about today. So I don't know what this is. Let's try that again. Oh man. That's what I get for sending a PDF, right? People are gonna say, I told you so. Oh man. Well, everybody just try blinking really fast. All right, I'll talk off this one. This kind of delivers the key message here. So the issue that we were having is water breakthrough in a well occurred up dip prior to it, breaking water in a mid dip position. And so here I've shown like basically producer 1, producer 2, and then there's a down dip injector 3. And the story is already outlined on this amplitude, right? That's the punchline as to why. And what was happening, again, I'm pointing in this lower left, this producer 2, which is up dip of producer 1, made water first. Why? And so, we went back and really went through the workflow and quickly, right? This was a simple single volume flattening tied together with some well data to try and explain, okay, well, this is why we're channeling water preferentially. I know everybody in here is like, well, duh, but sometimes when you're trying to update a model, understand your future potential, the oh, duh, you better be darn sure about, because it has a lot of implications down the road. So the team got together, we looked at some geologic scenarios to explain this, and really in this case, amplitude did it. We kept it simple, but we stuck in the stratigraphic sense and said, okay, well now can we explain this in our wells? Do we see this type of interpretation? Can we put something together like that? And I would never be able to construct this cross section. I'm not saying this is the only interpretation, but this was one of many, but without the guidance of our seismic, right? It really let me dive in to see these discontinuities, understand that they are the edge of these channel complexes. And so we were able to get back with the engineers on this and talk about, okay, well, this is why water's channelizing that way. Now, how do we want to handle that in a model, right? And that's the next step, right? Well, how do we want to handle it in the model? And so, there's many ways that, we've talked about doing that, but, I think that was, kind of the key message on that slide. One thing I maybe wanted to do is just watch that again. No, yeah, no, I think I've said enough there, but, so, I've been up here talking probably way over my time frame. And I just appreciate everybody just being quiet and, being interested in what we're showing here and what we're doing. But, there are a lot of important lessons learned, especially for your younger, generation that are coming up and you have your hands on the tools. You have the ability to really, help bring these new interpretations forward. A lot of us maybe that have been doing it a lot longer, we want to see the interpretations so we can help make decisions, right? So the thing I say to the young folks are use your geologic grounding, your fundamentals, work with your teams, your petrophysicists, your geophysicists, but also use your seismic, use your wells, and take a look at these things. You'd be surprised what pops out and is explaining things. And I do want to say that I never get it right the first time. Even if I go through every workflow and follow it to a T, I always find some type of interpretation that I picked wrong or that was picked wrong because we were, trying to force things through. And then little by little, you see those busts and you'll fix them if they're in an important area. So not an important area, maybe it's not that big a deal, you leave it, but your interpretations will change and only get better when you go through these. So I'd like to leave it with that. I think we're at 12:20. So what's next on the agenda? I think it's Q&A and discussion with the president. You want me to sing?
Please keep the applause coming. I think it's safe for the Chevron rep to come over as well as the president of this association. So while they are doing that, I have a couple of recognitions to make. Let me start with those that are the fellows that are online. We have Dr. Kehinde Ladipo, FNAPE. We have Dr. Daniel Lambert Akinbere, FNAPE, and current Board of Trustee member. We have Mr. Jibola Oyebamji, FNAPE, and past president. We have Mr. Muyiwa Olawoki, FNAPE. We have Mrs. Patricia Ochobo, past president of this great association, fellow and current AC member. A round of applause, please. So for those that, we equally have EXPO members that are online. We have Wilson Bosong, the Warri chapter coordinator, Dr. Christopher Jackson, our editor-in-chief, Tubasu Afolaya, publicity secretary, Philip Ajebili, UAPC chair, Elliot Ibier, the president-elect and fellow of this great association. We have Gideon Giwa, is the UK Europe chapter coordinator. Okay, so before we continue, I equally want to recognize the presence of some of the fellows in our midst. Tony Akinosho is a fellow of this great association. We have Dr. Antonio Former. Antonio Former is a fellow of the association and the current vice president. Then we have Mr. Jim Orife, the past president, fellow of the association, member of board of trustee, and former AC member. I would even like to recognize the presence of the first NAPE president. As a matter of fact, his membership number is 001. Is Dr. Otari. So please stand up for recognition. Yeah. You're welcome, sir. So before we continue, I would like to hand over to the chair of this gathering to conduct the question and answer session.
Okay, I guess that usually I'm expected to kind of like summarize what has been said, but you can see that I'm not about to do that. I'm still digesting what we had. It's a lot, it's wonderful, and that's the way studies should actually be done. I would say one of the things, or some of the things that I saw here is that integration of your data. Integration of your data. I remember one conversation had several years ago. We were looking at seismic. And I was saying to my colleagues, everything you see here has a meaning. The focus tends to be just try to make the structure map and drill the heights. But the point is that the seismic is portraying the subsurface. So trying to find out what it means indeed does help. When you have wells, it helps. So as we interpret, as we do our work, let's try to put together all the data that we have. That's part of what I saw there. You know, the wells, seismic, outcrops, you know, like you mentioned too, a lot of work has been done in outcrop studies, trying to understand what these bodies, what these environments look like. So having that understanding and looking for them on your seismic, you know, also helps. Having a workflow, saying this is the workflow. Look at studies that have been done previously. What's the workflow that was followed? You're not necessarily doing that sheepishly, but you're using that as guidance. Those are some of the things that I learned. And I was also going to say that NAPE, if you don't share what's, you know, at least share that lessons learned and best practices. You know, as a young person, you know, I'm one of the young people, you know, if I just have that best practices and lessons learned, it would definitely help my work. So that's actually where I want to stop with the summary. And we are going to take questions. I didn't hear how many questions we can take, but are there questions in the house? If you have a question, okay. Yes, sir. Is there a mic? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mike, for this wonderful, is it Frank or Mike? Frank, yeah, for the wonderful presentation. Thank you very much. My name is Jerome Asedebega. Mine is technical. Your spectral decomposition result was very revealing, very predictive. So, like the moderator has said, we are here to learn. I mean, sharing what you have done. So I want you to tell us the method of spectral decomposition that was deployed. Is it discrete Fourier method, or, you know, we have many of them. So which one in particular that gave us this result? Did you try maybe up to 5 and you came up with this? So if you came up with this, what is the method? Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, a very good question. Obviously, you've done a bunch of this yourself. Yes, no, it was the Fourier, for sure. I did test some different, some, I guess, some different wavelets in that. I tried the Morley versus the Ricker approach. And you know, for me, the Fourier is the best in the business right now. You know, they do have, you know, you can still go back and use some of the other ones, but the vertical resolution uplift using that really does a good job. And so I almost fast forward to that one by default these days. In the past, I have done a lot more manual comp where, you know, I manually go in and select the different frequency bins that I want to blend. So for those of you not familiar with spectral decomp, basically the easiest way to look at it is I'll separate the seismic data or the amplitudes into a frequency. So, and you'll need three of them. You need a low frequency, a middle frequency, and a high frequency. And then you blend them together using a RGB color scheme. And the idea is that it qualitatively shows you your low frequency events, which are going to be probably your thickest, to your high frequency events, which are going to be more your thinner events. And they, you know, they come in as those three colored blends. And so it really helps you understand the geology. But long answer to that is yes, the discrete Fourier with the Ricker.
Thank you. And I'm just wondering if we should take all the questions together. There might be some benefit in trying to combine. So hands up if you have a question. Okay, so maybe we can start from Jim. We'll take yours close to the end. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. My name is Taiwo. Good presentation. One of the slides actually caught my attention. The question, how do you manage the contact, fluid contact of sediments? Especially I see a lot of wells with channels possibly not communicating. So how are we able to manage that? How do you advise us once we do such?
Let's take another question. Yes, please. Yeah.
Thank you, Frank. My name is Franklin Audio. I actually have a basic question, technical, rather. Before you went into instantaneous amplitude and envelope, you know, you talked about the noise remover on the seismic. I just wanted a clarification out of curiosity. I believe you are dealing with maybe a post-stack data seismic. So when you mention noise remover, I'm just going into maybe processing proper. So I just wanted to be sure, is it a form of just within the interpretation window where you have structural smoothing, depends on the software you're using. So just before going into all that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a nice presentation. My name is Olumide Odumade. I work with DigiConnect. I have a question based on your amplitude extraction that showed your the fans that classified one of the fan as a sand system and the other one, I guess, is a shale system relatively. So I'd like to ask because while we've run several of those kind of fans before, and we came across works done by Gary Nichols on different kinds of fans, and he classified the shale system as between 0 to 30% sand, and the mixed sand and mud systems as 30 to 70%, and the sandy system as greater than 70% sand. Based on the wells that have penetrated those fans, are these Cashier's ratios, are they applicable to based on your observations?
I'm just thinking maybe we should take those three and then we can then do.
Yeah, no, thanks. All very, very good questions. I guess to start with the first one on the fluid contacts and, having well data versus not having well data, fluid contacts manifest themselves, in various ways, when you're looking at seismic and, in terms of, amplitudes and things like that, everybody's kind of used to, if you're in a, type 2, type 3, can you look at your angle stacks and get some ideas on fluid? My easy answer to that is, we've moved right into the reservoir properties from seismic specialists and go work with them on, fluid substitution models, things like that, together with a tuning wedge. But qualitatively, when I do look at seismic, when you do have prolific, hydrocarbons, and then all of a sudden you have water, absolutely, the frequency is changes, and obviously it usually is conformable to structure, right? So when I see these, amplitude anomalies, even in spectral space and things like that, that are very conformable, then I start thinking to myself, or all of a sudden I can image something way better for no good reason. Then I start to lean towards the fluid contact. So I hope that answered that question. And then, the question on the fan itself, whether there were, when I look at wells versus, seismic thicknesses and things like that in terms of shale to sand ratios, that's something, especially, something that's really important, and something that I've actually spent more time now investigating in like a distributary lobe type things and trying to understand how these things are stacking, because they're a lot harder to image. There's less of them, I guess in classic, terms, because I really take most of the things that we've learned in the Pleistocene and shallow high frequency, literature, academics, and I'll take that into the deep. And so I do see a correlation, to some extent, how well the inner lobes and things like that. I don't see that systematic thickness that they're kind of publishing on, but again, they've looked at a few outcrops and a few seismic examples in the modern. So more or less, yes, they're comparable and consistent, but always be open to say, okay, it doesn't follow this model exactly, but it's still probably something that, that we expect. Thank you. And the other question
was on noise removal.
Yeah, it was on noise removal on that. So yeah, in this particular example is in the processing workflow, for, mainly doing 4D type things. So there was some co-denoise, done in the processing workflow. So I'd have to dig out exactly when it was, but to believe it was post-stack. But this was not, kind of what I call post-processing noise removal. It was in the processing step.
Thank you. So I understand my time is up, but so Jim has the last question, and then that will be it.
Sorry. There you go.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My question is not a question. It's an issue to look at what you have done before. With all this that you just told us now, how much oil do you think we have left behind when these processes were not in place? And are you making any effort to look at what you had before, what you interpreted, what the results are, and what they should have been, and what they are now? Thank you.
No, very, very good question there. And that's hopefully what my company pays me to to still do, you know, and that's very well noted. And, you know, a lot of these assets have been properly characterized you know, before. And it's how do we continue to get value from them, even if they're properly characterized early in terms of just volume. How can we understand how the connectivity and scenarios where we need to, you know, maybe produce oil or pump gas or pump water to actually get to those? So, you know, I see a little bit of both. I see, you know, very good characterization already done. We know the volumes there. We know the reservoir area. But now as we get down to those last, hey, we really want to squeeze these last, you know, million barrels out of this field. How can we do that, you know, and best place our wells? Or maybe we can, you know, do an uphole, you know, recompletion or a conversion from a producer to an injector to really use these new workflows where we're showing, okay, hey, this is where the oil's stuck. We can't get to it because we need to, you know, push some water here. So I guess that's how I would combine the two. And then in some areas, yes, you know, maybe they weren't either a lot of effort wasn't done in their initial characterization stages. There's better opportunities, other prospects that had you know, maybe more economic, but as you know, global conditions change, price structures change, you know, now these other things are becoming economic, and, you know, to say, okay, now let's really dive in deep and do a characterization.
So, couple of questions online. This is coming from Muyiwa Olawoki, a fellow. He said he is asking for the flattening from your experience. Is it better to detum with shale or erosional surface? He made reference to slide 26. He said that it seems understanding the accretion process, that is lateral versus vertical, is very important in packaging the channel complex unit in the study area. So let me take another one from Dr. Kainde Ladibo. It's a shoreline morphologies change with time. That is, sea level changes are spatially from point to line source. This impacts on nature of sediment supply to the slope. Are you able to detect these controls in reservoir development and architecture in the Deepwater from your examples? And the last question is asking if this slide will be shared. This is from Momodu Awowo.
All right, well, let me start with the last one. That's probably the easiest for me. I think so. I'm pretty sure the PDF deck will be available there. And then the second question on point versus line source. Oh, that's a great subject to bring up. And it is something that, you know, yeah, we do see and use those things to help better understand the delivery into the deep water. And I think that's critical to have that insight and show examples of that so we can understand, you know, what do we expect? Maybe we only have seismic in this one little area, but all of a sudden, you know, maybe something comes available, you know, adjacent to us, and not having that kind of understanding won't give us a good basis on, okay, well, there really could be this same good opportunity over here because of the deposition and from source to sink being point versus being line source. So yeah, really good comment there. And then the first question on the flattening. Yes, the shale maximum flood, you know, you're kind of your best reflector that you have, you know, that's really showing horizontal continuity, that you have, you know, at least some faith in it being a time surface, a consistent time surface across. And they're not always going to be totally regional, right? You might have to, use a little piece of one underneath a channel or a canyon and string them together. But yeah, you're right. Like picking the sands or the erosional surfaces won't give you a good restoration when you go ahead with the flattening, and it could lead to some misguiding your interpretation there. Not to say that sometimes you're forced. Sometimes the best reflector out there is a big sheet sand, that's available. So use your judgment, but by and large, you kind of your regional shales or your condensed sections are another really good one to use. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. A round of applause for Frank, please. So let's quickly take our sponsor's remark. This will be taken by Olumide Lawal, the section lead subsurface operations and analysis.
So firstly, I'd like to start by acknowledging Frank's delivery and just to give a sense for what transpired this afternoon. This is months and possibly years of work that has just been distilled into about 45 minutes of technical conversation. So I just wanted to give it up one more time for Frank. Thank you. So on this occasion, I have the privilege of giving the sponsor back on behalf of Chevron, and I'm happy to do so. So on a personal note, I'm happy to see folks. I see senior industry practitioners. I see my friends. I see colleagues. I even see a bunch of my students, past and present. So truly, truly happy to be here. So I'm going to get into the business, and hopefully this is going to be one of your shortest speeches so that we can get going with item 7. I see a bit of energy waning. So before I get too much in the way, I'll make this as painless as I possibly can. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, everyone. My name, as was earlier said, is Olumide Lawal. I'm the manager for the subsurface operations and analysis section within the applied research and technical service division in Chevron Nigeria. Obviously, it's a subsurface thing. So we're just a bunch of subsurface people having a technical conversation. So it gives me great pleasure today to present the sponsor's remarks on behalf of our Chairman, Managing Director, Chevron Nigeria, who is unavoidably absent on this occasion. Permit me to stand on the pre-existing protocols as I once again warmly welcome you to the very first physical meeting of the monthly NAPE technical session since the onset, of the COVID pandemic. It truly, truly feels good to be back. Let me continue acknowledging the work by NAPE using its platform to organize events that pull industry professionals and key stakeholders together to discuss important subjects. And as we all know, continued learning is also a critical component for the sustained development of the oil and gas industry in Nigeria and the world beyond. Partnership remains the core Chevron value, and I'd like to reiterate Chevron's unwavering commitment to continuing to strive to be a partner of choice, focused on building productive, collaborative, trusting, and beneficial relationships, which NAPE facilitates in Nigerian oil and gas industry space. Chevron has consistently sponsored several NAPE's events, including the annual NAPE International Conference and Exhibition, the dinner events, the technical meetings such as we're having today, amongst many others. Chevron has also supported the employees, and we see many of them working in committees, enabling them to serve in different capacities within the NAPE domain. NAPE's efforts in promoting professionalism within the industry to enhance competence and disseminate technical information for public benefit is highly commendable. We appreciate this opportunity to further contribute towards the industry's growth by sharing our experience on the successes that we have recorded in the quest for lower carbon and energy solution for sustainable development. We're committed in our support of value-driven initiatives, especially in technology sharing and development. Once again, on behalf of Ray Kennedy, this is saying a big thank you for your attention, and I hope you found Chevron's delivery today very delightful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Olumide. Let's keep the applause happening. A round of applause for him again. So we are gradually getting to the end of the presentation session. Now we will be making our gift presentation, and that will be done by the president himself, Dr. James Edet. And I would like Olumide to stand up with Frank. Yeah, Frank will receive the gift while you support him.
Okay, on behalf of the entire membership of NAPE, Frank, we appreciate you for coming out today and giving us this presentation, which we found extremely informative. And for me personally, it is a good way to really bring up issues of this matter or this nature to the young ones, especially those who are going to carry on from where we stopped. And thank you very much. So because of this beautiful presentation, NAPE is proud to present you with this gift, and I hope you like it. Okay, right. We haven't finished. Now we have, I think you're now, you're going to present you with the lapel of the pin, lapel pin. So now you are a NAPE member by induction. And henceforth, you are, and you have the opportunity and the power to always wear that pin as an associate member of NAPE, and we welcome you. For Olumide, you are a NAPE member already. But be that as it may, I am not sure you've had a presidential pin given to you before. So now I'm going to give you and present you with a presidential pin. And this is going to henceforth make you a presidential member of the NAPE family. And the thing to note is that these presidential pins are different from the ones that are given to the active members. So this is a presidential pin. I mean, KK has been very supportive, even when he doesn't have anything, any reason to be a part of an activity, he makes sure he's always here. And for that, in fact, for volunteering all the time to be ready to serve NAPE, no matter what the conditions. I'm also going to, I know he has been presented with presidential medals before, but this one is a special one.
So it's time for pictures. Let's have the ESCO members around, the vice president and assistant editor-in-chief. Doja, Madam Doja, and Lynn, the two. No. Please come and join. Dr. Akume, can you join us? Yeah, please. Yeah. Yes, Oteri Akume. Dr. Oteri. Okay. Yeah, you can say that. We're going to take a couple of announcements before we go for lunch. Are you all aware that this year is an election year, so we will have a couple of announcements from Mr. Chris Enuma, the chairperson of the Electoral Committee. So he's going to unveil the candidates today. So we are reminded to pay our dues. We can't function without dues. So please, those are the rates. For students is 2,000, active members 12,000, associate members 12,000, and corporate 50,000. Please let's endeavor to pay our dues. Here are a couple of announcements from our chapters. Warri chapter will be having their technical presentation. The title is Trends in Exploration and Production, Data Management. It's going to be given by Mr. Cornel Anumba of Landmark, Nigeria. This will be followed by the Benin chapter. The title of their presentation, it's Addressing Wellbore Instability Challenge in Infill Wells. This will happen in August 31st and will be taken by Mr. David Odofin of Halliburton. Please, let's use the QR code to register for the conference. And if you want to access the NAPE news, you can equally use the QR code on display. A lot of information is contained in that newsletter. Again, to remind us of our conference that will come up in November. It's going to be the 40th anniversary conference, and the theme is Global Energy Transition and the Future of Oil and Gas Industry, Evolving Regulations, Emerging Concepts, and Opportunities. So I urge all of us to register and make ourselves available at the conference. We're going to be having the exhibition as usual. There will be pre-conference workshop, management sections, all convention luncheon, and short courses, African night, award ceremony, and a lot of technical presentations. We're equally going to be having a golf tournament that will be happening in Uyo. Okay, this is a flyer for the pre-conference workshop. The date is Wednesday, 26 October. Time is 9 a.m. The venue is Eco Hotel. The annual golf tournament will be happening at Ibom Icon Hotel and Golf Resort. This is in Uyo. For details, contact the Secretariat or Sukomi Iola. He is the chairperson of that subcommittee. We have management session. The theme for this year's management session is Decade of Gas Initiative and Lower Carbon Drive, Enablers, Opportunities, Finding and Challenges. This will happen on Monday, 14th November. Time is 9:30 a.m. Is to remind all of us that we still have exhibition spaces still available for sale. Please contact the Secretariat if you're interested in exhibiting at the conference. This is just to tell you, to show you the floor plan and some of the companies that have taken some of the spaces. This is, like I did mention, the short course. It's going to be on gas identification in Timbed using LWD measurements. It's going to be given by Stanley of So please, you can follow us on our social media handles. We have Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Even today's presentation will be on YouTube if you want to watch it. So I will hand you over to Mr. Chris Enuma, the chairperson of the Electoral Committee, to unveil the candidates for us.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Hold on, sir.
Can you hear me? Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you from the.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good afternoon and good morning, depending on wherever you are. So this afternoon, I'll be presenting the status of the 2022 NAPE election. Do you have the slides, or do I project the slides myself?
We are projecting it. Just hold on.
Okay, thank you. So while waiting for the slides, I would request that you permit me to stand on already established protocol because of time. So the electoral committee was put in place by the ESCO during March this year. And once I have the slides on, I can continue. Can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, very good. So the committee members are as follows: myself, Chris Enuma, as the chairman of the committee, and then according to the constitution, there should be a member of the BOT, and we have Chief Mavoye Orife, FNAPE. We also have Dr. Abraham Udo as AC member, representative on the committee. And we have Madam Mary Stella Shonuga, FNAPE, an emeritus. And then we have an FNAPE member, Madam BC Olapade. Next slide, please. So immediately we went into action and established a planning. This planning was approved by the ESCO, and the first advert we did was on the 30th of March. And the duration was to end at 15th of May. And because of the turnout of candidates, we had low turnout. We had to put in place a first extension from the 30th of May to the 10th of June. And after this first extension, we still didn't have enough candidates. So we had another extension from the 20th of June to 22nd of June. And finally, we had a third extension, which lasted from 1st of August to 2nd of August. And this will bring me to, although that is not the purpose of this presentation, but I will encourage members to try as much as possible to participate in elections in order to serve in the executive committee. This is very, very important. It's not only good for us as members, but also it will help us in future in occupying other positions of responsibilities, even in our different companies. So I will just go straight to the candidates. We screened the candidates who put up applications. And I would like to mention here that the screening we did was strictly according to Section 11 of the NAPE Constitution. And the following candidates that I will be presenting now were screened by us, presented to the AC, as the case may be, and then also presented to the ESCO. So the candidates I'm presenting to you are already approved by ESCO and the Advisory Council. The first candidate you have here is Mr. Abiodun Ogunjobi, who works with New Cross E&P Limited. For all the candidates, I'm not going to read the purpose to serve, but I will just briefly present the contributions they have made to NAPE. You can check in the websites. What I'm presenting to you, you should find on the website already. So Mr. Abiodun Ogunjobi is actually contesting for the position of president-elect. He has been vice president from 2018 to 2019. He has been a member of NAPE Conference Planning Committee from 2012 to date. And he has been chairman, Distinguished Award Committee in 2019. Having served as vice president, Mr. Ogunjobi has made a lot of contributions, which we have, but we are just trying to limit each candidate to 3 contributions. Next slide, please. So there are 2 candidates for the position of General Secretary. The first candidate is Dr. Emmanuel Madrawai, who works with Rex Ella Resources. Dr. Madrawai has successfully organized 2021 NAPE NMGS mini conference. He has also successfully increased the NMGS contribution to the mini conference from 30% to 50%. And he has also been serving on the NAPE conference protocol team from 2015 till date. The second candidate for this position of General Secretary is Ibrahim Dong, who is working with the Federal Ministry of Mines and Resources. Mr. Dong has been a Abuja chapter secretary from 2016 till date. He has been in the editorial committee, volunteering in media, publicity committee, content creation, and also serving in the poster section. Mr. Dong has also been participating in documentation of NAPE activities in his chapter. And also whenever the National ESCO comes to Abuja for courtesy calls and other events. Next slide, please. So here we have 2 candidates as well for the position of a publicity secretary. The first person here is Austin Mbemire. Austin works with Rockview Integrated Energy Solutions Limited. He has contributed a lot to NAPE, closely with some NAPE ESCOs, including former and current publicity secretaries, to provide value to the NAPE community. And he has also served as the YP lead and then a member of Conference Planning Committee from 2015 till date. The second candidate for this position of publicity secretary is Dr. Chioma Okafor. She works with Chevron Nigeria Limited. Chioma has contributed a lot as being a pioneer leader of NAPE YP and initiated several activities. Like I said, all of the candidates have a lot they have contributed to NAPE and also to the industry. So Dr. Chioma Okafor has been a member of the pre-conference workshop for NAPE and also judge for the maiden edition of NAPE October 1st essay competition. Next slide, please. The next position is the position of editor-in-chief. We just have one candidate in the person of Dr. Shofolabo Adekunle, who is a lecturer in University of Port Harcourt. Dr. Adekunle has been a member of the Conference Planning Committee from 2017 till date. He has been a member of NAPE Editorial and Technical Board from 2017 till date. He has also served as Publicity Secretary of NAPE Port Harcourt chapter from 2017 till date. Next slide, please. The next position is the position of the financial secretary. We just have one candidate in the name of Dr. Charles Otorile. Dr. Otorile works with Schlumberger Limited. He has been Assistant General Secretary from 2018 to 2020. He has been a member of Conference Planning Committee from 2014 till date. He has been a keynote speaker in various NAPE YP events. Next slide, please. The next position is the position of treasurer. We just have one candidate as well in the name of Mr. Adeola James, who works with NNPC E&P Limited. Mr. James has facilitated the sponsorship and serves as moderator for monthly technical meetings. He has facilitated and supervised the compilation of NAPE members in MPDC, and he has served as Deputy AIC and ASG on the National Executive Committee from 2012 to 2016. Next slide, please. The next position is the position of Assistant General Secretary. This is the only candidate for this position. Dr. Mohammed Mala works with NUPRC. Dr. Mala is an active member of NAPE Editorial and Technical Committee from 2021 to date. He's an active member of NAPE Young Professionals, and he was also the chairman, sponsorship and communique subcommittee of the NAPE UAP Leadership Forum, which was held in Port Harcourt. Next slide, please. This candidate for the Assistant Editor-in-Chief is Dr. Sunday Amoyedo, who works with Total Energies E&P Nigeria Limited. Dr. Amoyedo has served in the Conference Planning Committee, especially in the Editorial Subcommittee for several years. He has been guest speaker at the NAPE Monthly Technical Workshop in both Lagos and Port Harcourt. And you will remember he was introduced as a specialist in 4D seismic monitoring, worldwide recognized. Dr. Sunday Amoyedo has supported the YP with the provision of seismic and well data. And he also is involved in mentoring IT students from universities and other institutions. So next slide, please. So the timeline of the election, like I said, a planning was made at the beginning of when the committee was inaugurated, and we followed this guideline very strictly. And the guideline also follows the NAPE constitution as well. So we have all the activities you see that are in green, all the activities that the Electoral Committee has already gone through. And today we are in the physical presentation of the candidates, which we actually decided to have between the 18 to 31, depending on sponsorship of technical presentation. And we are lucky to have this presentation of today, which falls within the range of the 18th to the 30th that we have stipulated in the on our planning. Please, can you go back to the previous slide?
Chris, we are running out of time. We need to.
So I'm done. I'm done in 45 seconds. So what we have here next is actually a very important part of this process, and that will be the election, which should start on the 1st of September, according to the Constitution. So we are still in line, and then finally we go through the process and then announce the results of election to the AGM sometime in October. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to have further details on the website, so please feel free to go to the website and get that information. So let's quickly round up by calling on Dr. Anthony Ofoma. Anthony is a fellow and the current vice president of the association. He'll be giving us a very brief closing remark.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the president of NAPE, executive committee members, BOT, that's the Board of Trustees, the Advisory Council, fellows of NAPE, and members of NAPE present, we say a very big thank you to our sponsors. We cannot talk about NAPE without talking about Chevron. Chevron has been there for us all the way, and we are very grateful. Chevron has taken up a lot of things for us, and we are eternally grateful to Chevron. Please, can we give Chevron a round of applause? They have been always there for us. They've been doing things for us, and we appreciate you, Chevron. So we thank Chevron for what they've done, and we plead and say, please continue to do more because NAPE needs you. Once again, thank you very much.
Thank you. So we have 3 serving points. We'll have our sponsors and the fellows to please use the one to my left. Then I will say from the middle of that seat, I can use the serving point to my right. We equally have another serving point here. So I think we have enough to make this a very quick one. So please, Victoria will direct us, and okay, where are we going? Let's start with Dr. Okomeno Terry. Let's start with you. Huh? So after lunch, that brings us to the end of this month's monthly technical presentation. Please, we hope to see you again next month for another one. And please enjoy yourself and remain safe. Thanks for finding time to come. Bye-bye.